so if you wish to leave, please do so. Okay. How exactly did we get to this? Hello, my name is Sarai Zayed, and welcome to my presentation on a history of the conflict in the Middle East. The reason I chose this topic is because I feel as though many people only get to see one side of this issue, and on such an important topic, there needs to be more diverse coverage. So let's begin with Zionism. Its official definition, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a movement for, originally, the re-establishment, and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation in what is now Israel. According to my expert, Dr. Heather Keeney, Zionism can also be known as Jewish nationalism. Theodor Herzl, one of the main proponents of Zionism, said that assimilation into European culture was desirable, but impossible due to anti-Semitism, which is the hatred and discrimination against Jews. Therefore, he said, Jews could only live normally through concentration in one territory. Another argument for Zionism is that in Judaism, Jews were promised the Holy Land by God. Originally, the Zionist goal was to create a Jewish state somewhere in the world, and it later evolved to be a Jewish state in Palestine. When the Ottoman Empire, which controlled the area, collapsed after World War I, Palestine came under British rule. Britain had always been an unofficial supporter of Zionism, but due to the Balfour Declaration of 1917, it was official policy. The population of Jews and Arabs in 1914 was less than 8%, with the full population of Arabs and Jews being 650,000. After the Balfour Declaration, 100,000 Jews immigrated to Palestine. Jews believed that unlimited immigration, which was allowed by the British, would render them a majority, thereby granting them the right to own Palestine. This mass immigration caused unrest in the Palestinian people, ultimately leading to the 1936 revolt. This was when Palestinian protests began. A general strike was declared, and other forms of political protest, such as non-payment of taxes, also took form. The goal of this revolt was to change British policy by limiting large-scale Jewish immigration, banning further land sales to Jews, and to allow the Palestinians their own national government. Then, during World War II, the Holocaust occurred. As many of you know, the Holocaust was a brutal killing of 6 million Jews by the Nazis. This horrific event paved the way for further justification for the Zionist movement. Over 600,000 Jews immigrated between 1945 and 1949. In 1947, due to ongoing riots, tension, and violence, the UN passed General Assembly Resolution 181. This called for a partition of the Holy Land. A part would be a Jewish state, and the other part would be an Arab state. On May 15, 1948, the official British mandate, which was the term for British governance of Palestine, was set to end. And so, on May 14th, near midnight, the Jews declared themselves an independent new nation called Israel. This triggered a war between the newly formed Israel and Palestinians, who were allied with the nearby Arab neighbors of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. The outcome of this war is known to the Israelis as the War of Independence, and is known to the Palestinians as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. The outcome of the 1948 war was that the Israeli Defense Forces formed, and that there was a new state called Israel, with 77% of British mandate Palestine. There were 750,000 Palestinians displaced from their homes to Gaza, the West Bank, and surrounding areas, and surrounding countries such as Jordan. 500 Palestinian towns were destroyed, and various sources say different things, but between 3,000 and 15,000 Palestinians were killed. In 1967, Israel attacked Egypt and Syria. It lasted 6 days, earning it the title of the Six-Day War. The outcome of this war was that the current Israeli land was now 3.5 times its original size in 1948. Another 300 Palestinians were displaced, amongst which 150,000 were already displaced from 1948. After 1967 is when the territories that we now refer to as Gaza and the West Bank arose. Gaza, if you look at the map, is this 25 by 5 mile strip of land. It was annexed from Egypt in 1967. The West Bank are the territories there in the east. Collectively, they are known as the occupied territories. Now, there are lots of wars and uprisings that I could talk about here, but I will summarize the main pattern. So either the Israelis or Palestinians instigate something. The Israelis usually are the ones who begin military action. Conflict ensues, and the majority of time, more Palestinians are displaced, more land is annexed by Israel, more Palestinian infrastructure is destroyed, more people are killed. It is an endless cycle. So, what is the situation like today? Let's start with systematic discrimination. The NGO Human Rights Watch says that Israel is, and I quote, committing the crimes against humanity of apartheid and persecution against Palestinians. Moving on, there are 140 checkpoints across the West Bank, which limits Palestinians' freedom of movement. Illegal settlements, filled with over 750,000 settlers in the West Bank. Israel demolishes hundreds of Palestinian homes every year, displacing thousands. As of December 2024, the latest data I could find, there are about 10,000 Palestinians in detention or prison without fair trial, many of whom are children. Israel also launches attacks on Gaza, the latest one having killed more than 65,000 people, making Gaza the most long place per capita in the world. So, these are the issues. So how do we get out of this? These are the issues that I believe, when solved, will result in lasting peace. The one-state/two-state solution, refugees, settlements, and the West Bank wall. So there are two main solutions that are generally proposed. The first is a two-state solution, as ratified in UN Resolution 181. There would be an Arab country and a Jewish country. In my view, however, this could never work, for many reasons which I will explain in my practical application. The second option is a one-state solution. My interpretation of this is that it's one country with one citizenship and equal rights for all, no matter one's religion or ethnic background. So, refugees. Currently, there are approximately 8.36 million Palestinian refugees displaced outside of the country. Most of them are third and fourth generation. Some of them want to return to their homes in Palestine, and some of them choose to settle in their new countries. Right now, however, they cannot choose. I believe there has to be open borders and the ability to return. However, there is an issue. Palestinian homes have either been destroyed or occupied by Jews. So, for those homes destroyed, they could be rebuilt. And for those homes occupied, then there should be the ability for the Palestinians to move back in. Next comes the issue of settlements. There are approximately 200 illegal Jewish settlements along the West Bank, populated by over 750,000 Israeli settlers. The main problem with these is that settlers are extremely violent to Palestinians living alongside them. Settlements are continuing to grow by settlers forcibly displacing and killing the Palestinians living alongside them. So my proposal for this is as follows. First of all, don't make any new settlements, and to mitigate settler violence, with a new country with more equal courts, there will be punishment for these repercussions for Israeli settler actions, whereas right now they aren't. And to the problem of where do the Palestinians who were displaced by the settlers go, and what to do with the current settlements, I don't really know, but I do know that something has to change. Next comes the West Bank wall. This was a wall that Israel built around 1992 under the pretext of security measures. However, it divides Israeli land and Palestinian neighborhoods. This causes think about the Berlin Wall. It separates. I believe that this has to be torn down. presentation, because there is so much information I could not put into this 10 minutes, I decided to make a podcast where I will talk about various wars, uprisings, issues, all in 5-minute segments. You can scan here to find it, and it is also on your brochures. For my expert, I interviewed Dr. Heather Toomey, a professor of Middle East history at Westmont College. She was extremely helpful with discussions and giving me new perspectives on this topic. So thank you to her. Here's some sources. Here's some more sources. And for my reflection, well, you see, I emailed over 20 experts, and Ian also emailed various ones, thank you. But not a single one agreed to come and speak on my podcast. This just shows how it's like, it's a no-go topic. Nobody talks about it. It's like he who should not be named, you know? I believe that's why it was so important to do this presentation as well. So that was the main difficulty with my practical application. I overcame it by adapting my practical application plan to not have guest speakers. And my advice is to start your practical application earlier, because that way if something changes, you can adapt. Thanks for listening. Do you have any questions?
So I really you really illustrated your perspective in like a really good way. Like I know that there are people with different perspectives. However, do you know like what some of their counter arguments may be?
Yeah. Palestine was a land without people for people without land. That is a major argument. It was like the Jews had nowhere to go, and there was nobody in this land. So like, what's the problem? You know?
Yeah.
But obviously there were people in this land, and so that would be my response. Additionally, there's the argument that like, what about Hamas and all these people, and Jews are like, there's so much hatred, you know, and so much discrimination, so they need a place for themselves. Well, that is true. However, I believe that the solution is not to create a solely Jewish state, because I believe that maybe the solution, perhaps, could have been to integrate into other cultures, like going against what Theodore Herzl believed, but not to isolate. You know what I mean?
So that wall that you were mentioning earlier, like divides the people of Gaza and the people of Israel.
No, not just Gaza. Across the whole. Yes,
obviously, having millions of people come to a land where work is complicated, but what about maybe difficult to ask an entire culture to assimilate other cultures?
well, yeah, but you don't have to. Sorry, assimilate is not really the right word. You don't have to go all into one country, but like you could spread out across the world. I mean, look at a good example is Christians, right? Although don't give me that look. Although perhaps we have countries in America that tries to like privilege, for example, Christians, there are still Christians all over the world, correct? So there's not a country that's just for the Christians, and any person who isn't Christian is discriminated against. Well, there is, it's not right. Okay, moving on. Noel.
So you're kind of like in the beginning, you kind of talked about like going towards your topic, kind of wanting to like basically share both sides of the story. So like I feel like would it make more sense then to include two videos in the beginning, kind of one from the Israeli side, one from the Palestinian side?
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean that I wanted to show two sides of the story. I mean, in all mainstream American media today, look at the New York Times, for example. It is very, very lean towards the Israeli perspective. Extremely. Like, whereas if you look perhaps at Al Jazeera, which isn't looked so much by, for example, Americans, there is more diverse coverage. So I believe that if you always get to see one side of the issue, I want to give you another side. Yes, I yell it.
What I was trying to say is that it's like kind of biased for you to only do one side if you're going to say that you're going to do both sides.
Do you think my presentation is biased?
question.
Right. I could agree with you there.
I have a question.
But I love you. Right. I could agree with you there. However, every single other thing that most of you in this room have heard is also biased. So it's like you have a scale, right? You only look at the Israeli side. So I want to present with you a different perspective, understand?
I want to clarify. That's not what I meant. I know what I was talking about. Don't listen to my yelling. That's not what I meant.
Okay.
I want to clarify that.
Yeah, real quick.
So, like, kind of following up on Damien's question, so I just want to clarify. So, are you suggesting that, like, a group of people that had already been massacred be separated further into different parts of, say, Europe, North America, the Middle East, Africa? Like, would you suggest separating them even more after they'd already, like, been through this massive, like, horror that they had endured in the Holocaust?
Well, what else do you suggest?
See, I think the suggestion would be is that if there's obviously going to be a problem with someone immigrating and like a group of people moving to a certain state, and especially in a one-state solution, at least in the one-state solution, you can't solve for racism and you can't solve for any like settlement crimes because it's a pretty vast territory. You can't really stop every single crime, as well as the same thing very well could have happened if they moved into a different area. And according to the Jews, this was also Holy Land for them. So after they
Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Just
exactly, so they actually had a very good reason to move into Palestine, but separating them would lead to more uproar from the Jews side. So you'd actually rather like you're looking at it in hindsight rather than looking at what might happen if you separated them in the first place.
So, what is your question exactly?
I didn't ask a question. You asked me to like explain.
Well, he is shaking his head wildly at me, so yeah.
Thanks. So I was wondering, like, what do you think the U.S. should be doing other than, like, I understand that, like, their funding to Israel is a little bit excessive, but, like, what else is it?
Yeah, so maybe not the best example, but Jimmy Carter was very progressive as far as American presidents go in this topic. He really advocated for a two-state solution, but he was at least very good at negotiating, of course. So I believe there should be more of a negotiator, objective role perhaps.
Yeah.
All right, folks, thank you. Just to arrive and